And we are going to be going into the game. It's going to be effOrt versus Sharp on Circuit Breaker. This is the first in, I believe, a 4-part series. So we are going to be seeing it from both players' perspective, which is always nice. You can see where people flub up, where they make mistakes, or where they do things that are really inhumanly amazing. Like that one time we saw Jaedong micro tank and kill off like 10 lings. It was pretty sick. So, ZVT, I talk about this matchup a lot. The beginning is pretty stale. The opening is usually pretty boring. There's not really a lot going on. For some reason, we just dropped quality. Let's go ahead and bump that back up. Alright, there we go. So, there's not a lot of variety in the early game. It's almost always dominated by both players going for a relatively fast but safe expand. Neither race can really harm the other one, besides the occasional bunker rush. That might be the only thing that we really see that deviates from the norm. Otherwise, it's pretty much always gasless fast expands from both players, and after that they just boost their economy really hard and tech up until they get to mid-tier tech. So we'll have to see what goes on. Sharp, obviously not the best Terran player in the world. He did have his moment of glory in the ASL 1. He ended up in the finals versus Shuttle, I believe, and did really, really well overall that season. But since then, he really just hasn't looked quite as good. And I think it's partially because he's kind of a TVT one trick without TVT to walk off the back of, and he has a lot more trouble. And of course, playing TVT versus Flash and Last is always really, really difficult as well. So in the later ASLs, he's definitely had a lot more problem. I don't think he even qualified for the ASL 3. But in any case, we should see a pretty interesting game. I think both these players are at about the same level. effOrt really hit his stride at the later stages of the Sonic Star League era, but he never was able to actually break through and become a very consistent player. And even now we see that even though he has the mechanics, even though he's very quick and very mechanically strong, sometimes he just makes a lot of really dumb mistakes, and it comes back to bite him. So Scout coming out right now. We did see a slight deviation from Sharp. He actually went for a CC first instead of going for the more standard racks into... Oh, never mind, I lied. There's the racks. I couldn't see it on the minimap. Ignore me, ignore me. So, it is going to be completely standard for both players. Nothing out of the ordinary. The next big thing to note is, what do we see from the turn? It looks like it is going to be that eBay, so Sharp going into the +1 5 racks that Flash popularized a few months ago. The +1 5 racks has basically been dominating this matchup for a very long time now because it allows you to get very strong map pressure. You don't push out very early, but it's not really a big deal because by the time you do push out, you have very, very strong Marine medic forces, and you're able to quickly reinforce that if something get picked off or shed off by the initial Mutalisk. So it's a pretty good opening, it's pretty strong, it's pretty flexible, and then after that you can choose to either go into more of a standard Marine tank science vessel, but oh, nice little pick here for Sharp. He might actually be able to kill off this Overlord. So, a nice pick for him. That puts him a little bit ahead in the early game, and I think that almost guarantees that effOrt will probably have to put down a Sunken at some point. But in any case, the 5 racks +1 build is very flexible. It can go into SK Terran style with double starport, or it can go into the standard tank vessel. It can also just go straight into the mech if you grab Vultures early on, and then you can just get map control with Vultures and the Marines and just go into standard mech play from there on out. Split it map up. there's lots of different things that you can do with FiberX, and that's why it's become so popular, and it's been a menace for Zerg players to really try to deal with. The most successful way that I've seen it dealt with recently is just Zerg players going for very heavy counterattack styles. Basically, when the first group of Marine Medic goes out on the map, the Zerg will immediately go in and try to do a counterattack, try to get some free damage in there, kill off SUVs, kill off reinforcing Marines, maybe kill off some of the infrastructure, and then follow up thereafter with a very safe third base because they've neutered a lot of that pressure. But the problem is a lot of Zerg players still haven't quite refined that. The standard Zerg play where you just go for 3-hatch, muta into lurkers in a third base into hive, that's been around for basically forever, and that's been refined so much to a point where everyone knows how to play that basically. But against the 5-racks, people have a lot more trouble with it. Zerg players are having a lot of trouble really finding an answer to it. And so we are seeing a slow resurgence of players just investing really heavily into the mid game, lots of counterattacks and things like that to help allow them to secure that third base against the 5-racks pressure. So nice job here from effOrt. He's going to be able to get into his opponent's main base and see exactly what's going on. He knows it's the 5-racks going on. Oh, he even picks off an SCV, so nice little win there for him. And he's actually going to pick off a Marine in the front as well. So this has been pretty decent so far for effOrt. He has a full scout on what his opponent's doing. He knows what's coming. And this is one of those things that I would like to see Zerg players do more often. While they're pushing out with these first mutalisks, they really need to go up to just mass-produce drones and go up to 4 Sunkens, because as soon as you have those 4 Sunkens up, you're completely safe. And the mutalisks can do as much harassment as they want. They don't have to focus on flying back to defend if they need to. They can just purely focus on pressure and doing a lot of damage. But really, it all comes down to having really good vision of your opponent. If turn pushes out without the Zerg player realizing that it's happening, they can find themselves in quite a bit of trouble very, very quickly, especially if they skimped on Sunkens early on. So Hydra's already out for effOrt. He's done a really good job of just using these mutalisks to put pressure on the map without losing too many. He does lose one there, which is not ideal, but it does buy him, he has bought enough time to get those Hydralisks out, and he's going to go ahead and send those over to the third base, so he can go ahead and start building that hatchery. And that's really the big signal for Zerg. If they can get that third hatchery up with their lurkers at the top of the ramp, they're going to be in pretty good shape. So effOrt kind of giving away where his base is, because he's constantly flying around up towards the direction of his base. And it basically makes it really easy for Sharp to get a good idea of what's going on. So eventually effOrt is actually going to be able to clean that up pretty nicely. It wasn't the most cost efficient thing. He ended up losing quite a few mutalisks in return. But Sharp making a mistake. He actually went to the wrong side of the map. So he lost that group of Marine Medic for free and doesn't even threaten the third base. So effOrt's third base is going to get up easy peasy 100%. And this is what I love to see. 5 Sunkens at the front for effOrt. It makes it so much easier for him to defend against these pushes that are coming back. Or at the very least, it buys enough time for the mutalisks to fly back if they're harassing. So overall, I really like the play from effOrt so far. He just got his lurkers up, so he's going to be burning those at the top of the ramp. It's still possible to break up this ramp with just pure Marine Medic, but it's a risky thing and it requires a lot of attention, so it gives the Zerg players still plenty of time to actually move back in and deal with it. So Sharp is just kind of poking around here. He's looking for an angle to try to go in or pick off mutalisks coming out of the main base, etc. But he's not going to find anything. effOrt doing a really good job. He's got the third base up now. He's harassing the main with his mutalisks, and his natural is 100% safe. Behind this, he's going to be taking up the hive and trying to get into those defilers so that he can start pushing the Terran army back and start doing a lot of damage. I love that he's already incorporating the Scourge in really early. He knows that there's the possibility of his opponent going for that SK Terran style with the dropships first, so he's actually just getting Scourge up very, very early, which will allow him to check off the areas in his main base and his third base over in the corner and allow him to really deal with it. He sees the armory going down, so early armory indicates that Sharp is definitely looking to switch into mech quite early in this game. He's not going to stay here forever. But really good sandwich so far by Sharp. But the Mutilos are just too slippery. They're going to be able to get out just fine. Meanwhile, what is the state of the tech for effOrt? That's what I really want to know. Okay, Defiler Mountain just finishes. And with the Defiler Mountain down now, he's going to be in a pretty good spot to deal with stuff coming out. Really nice run by with these Vultures. This is a very nice play coming out from Sharp. And the first dropship is out as well, so hopefully effOrt will be prepared for this wherever he can. He's about to transfer a bunch of those drones through his Nidus Canal, so this might be a little bit questionable, but he's eventually going to be able to clean up these Vultures, or at least push them away from his barrel line enough to actually mine. And here's the first dropship. It's going to be loaded up. No medics in that dropship though, so it's not the scariest dropship in the world. Dropship with 1 or 2 medics is infinitely scarier because the Marines are much more survivable. But it looks like Sharp is already looking towards switching into mech. He's stopped all Marine production, and these Scourge are going to be able to... Oh, the Scourge actually did kill it off, and this drop is looking really successful right now. There's nothing in the main base, and effOrt is not responding quickly to this. But in the meantime, there are a lot of health that is going down for these Marines. Sharp is going to have trouble keeping them alive versus just a couple of Lings come out to reinforce. But still, a lot of drones going out right there, and no 4th base for Sharp. He needs to get a 4th base up soon. Now that he has his Defilers up, now that he has the Lurkers up, he needs to start heading towards that 4th base so they can go ahead and get the 4 gases up that he needs to transition into full late game, get all of the upgrades that he needs, get the economy necessary for Ultralists and stuff like that. So hopefully that'll be coming out soon. Losing yet another drone at the bottom of that ramp, which is a bit unfortunate. But so far, Sharp is doing a pretty good job of keeping his opponent pinned back. Luckily, that is a very nice swarm, so this is going to allow that's going to allow effOrt to actually finally push back out here and push this army back. So good to see. The Lurker should be able to basically handle everything from here on out. And at this point, it's just making sure that he has a Defiler at his 3rd base and is natural at all times. The worst thing that you can do for yourself is forget to have a Defiler at your 3rd and natural all the time, because all it takes is 1 irradiate to completely erase all of your defenses. That's so annoying, those Marines behind the mineral line, but oh wow, these Vultures getting so many free drones transferring. Wow, that was a huge mistake. I think he meant to click on the Nidus Canal, but for whatever reason it didn't work. He ended up shift queuing it wrong, so all of the drones transferred manually across the map. That is really bad for effOrt. He just lost a ton of drones. That's going to take at least another macro cycle to actually macro back up. Meanwhile, Sharp is already transitioning into this mech play. He's got the science pistols he needs up. He's actually going to irradiate these Overlords, which is a little confusing. That's a little bit atypical to use the irradiates on nearby Overlords, but maybe he just wants to make sure that all the scouting information is as hidden as possible. The tank production is also going to be ramping up quite a lot at this point. Pretty interesting that he went for an early Goliath. Usually you just want to go very heavily into the tanks and the Vultures, but you can tell he's afraid of the potential Mutalisk switch early on. This is a ton of Lurkers at this base for effOrt, but he's doing a good job of just playing defensively and getting all of his bases up. As long as he doesn't take too much damage in the next couple of minutes, he's going to be in a really nice spot where he has 4 gases and he can just mass produce nothing but Defiler Ling Ultra. Really powerful, and it will also allow him to get up to 8 or 9 hatcheries and just blast out tons and tons of units. So also taking the interior mineral base, so effOrt isn't going to be all in on his hive tech. He's definitely playing for the longer game, wants to go to the split map scenario, He's not going to go for a timing attack where he just kind of overruns the Terran bases over in the bottom right-hand corner. But that is something to keep in mind, that Sharp is already getting that third base up in the bottom right-hand corner, and that's going to allow him a lot of room in the future to actually get his economy up and start moving forward quickly in this game. But effOrt is going to try to break this right now. He's getting a little stuck on the bridge. All of these lurkers just kind of getting confused and running around in circles. So that was a little bit unfortunate. That's Brew War pathing for you. Even though it looks pretty, it still feels bad. So more and more Lings in here trying to get up this ramp and really do some damage here. But there really isn't a lot left for Sharp. I'm a little bit worried about his ability to hold this base over the next couple of minutes. It is really nice though, because he does have the high ground and he does have that fire bat up there, so that worked out pretty well for him overall. But effOrt is basically just going to want to keep drilling this base over and over and over until he breaks it. I would like to see him go ahead and start up the Ultralisk tech, just get the Ultralisk Cavern and start up the Chitinous plating so that he has the ability to switch into that later on. Just committing really, really hard with just mass Lings and a few lurkers here is not ideal. You really want to get yourself in a position where you can actually get into that Ultralisk and break your opponent later on in the game. But a couple of Lings do get in here, and they're going to be able to kill off quite a few SCVs. This is really nice for effOrt. This is eventually going to get cleaned up by the Vultures, but in the meantime, effOrt has done some pretty nice damage. He's killed off some of the economy, maybe even forced a lift over there as well, so it's going pretty well in effOrt's favor so far. But the longer this game goes, the more the map gets split, the more advantages that Mech has. So without any sort of power play coming in pretty soon, if effOrt just decides to go for the mass inefficient trade style where he's just sending tons of Lings, tons of Ultras across the map, if he's not able to break his opponent over the next couple of minutes, he's going to find himself in an area where he can't really beat the economy and he can't really do much else. So it's going to be much more difficult. But here we see the trump card. He's going to pull out the trump card early, which is the mass Mutalisk switch. And this has already been scouted by Sharp. He knows this is coming because the barracks saw it. Unfortunately, I don't think there are actually any defenses in this bottom right-hand base. Maybe he's making a couple of Goliaths now, but the Mutalisks are making a beeline for it. Actually finding a couple tanks to pick off for free, so that's really nice. And really good Irradiate goes down on that Mutalisk clump. That actually ended up doing quite a bit of damage, but with so many Mutalisks, it's going to be easy for effOrt to actually clean this up. He's got a lot. He can honestly clean up a lot of these tanks, but he really just needs to get to the bottom right-hand corner. That's really the big deal here. Getting down to the bottom right-hand corner is going to be the winning move for him. But a Vulture run by here over in the top right-hand base, sorry, top left-hand base, is going to cause a lot of damage to these probes. He really needs to get a Darksworn over that mineral line so he can continue mining. He does do that, but these Vultures continuing to be really, really annoying over here, getting even more drone kills. It's one of those things where in the late game you really need to put down at least one Sunken in these other bases just to deal with them. And the Mutalisks are going to actually go for the 6 o'clock base instead of the bottom right-hand base to break that. So this is going to be kind of an interesting move here, but it sets up a really nice blockade in between, which allows for his ground units to eventually go over here and destroy this third base as well. So overall this is really nice, but these Vultures being so cost efficient and doing so much damage down here in this bottom mineral line. Now without a lurker down there to actually do anything about it, effOrt is losing quite a few drones. This is becoming actually really detrimental to his economy. And without mining from that gas, without mining from that mineral, he's going to find himself in a situation where he doesn't really have a lot to actually deal with his opponent coming up. So now coming in here to the bottom right-hand base, but there's missile turrets up there now. Now Sharp is prepared. He knows how to deal with it. And Mutalisks actually just suiciding in here. They're not going to get anything else done. Maybe kill off a couple more SCVs, but not the greatest play overall by effOrt. Just kind of falling apart to the pressure of just those few Vultures that did so much damage. And this is where I'm wondering, when are the Ultras coming out? I hope the Ultras are coming out now, because he really needs to start pushing down this bottom right-hand base. The bottom right-hand base is allowed to get up, and the factory production starts ramping up. It's going to be almost impossible to break this right-hand corner base. A couple of Lings running ahead of the Defiler. You really have to be smart about where you're putting your Defilers, making sure that Lings aren't getting too far ahead. That's one of the biggest mistakes I see with pros in these late game situations is they'll end up just boxing a bunch of units and sending them across the map. But as a result, they end up usually letting the Lings go way out in front, and they're not synced up with Ultralisks or the Defilers from behind. I would really like to see at least one or two more groups of Lings. You can't really get away with just sending Ultralisks across the map. If you just send Ultralisks in this position, you're going to find yourself in a really bad area where you can't actually do much damage to the tank army, because all of your damage comes from the Lings. Lings are all of your damage. And one thing that we're definitely missing from effOrt is we've seen almost no plagues come out. And that's really what allows you to deal with these science vessels cost effectively. It allows you to get on top of huge groups of tanks very easily. And it's a bit surprising that he hasn't really gone into that plague very much yet. Right now he's just trying to manually clear mines with Lings, but I honestly don't think it's very good. I think that more Zerg players really should focus on getting a couple of late game Mutalisks just to patrol around the map and clean up mines themselves. And oh gosh, that Defiler goes down for free. This is really brutal. effOrt is now officially in a really, really bad position. Sharp has been able to get down that bottom right-hand base up and running now. He's got it well fortified, and he's even expanding to the last base on his side of the map. At this point, the game is squarely in favor of the Terran player. Sharp doing a really good job of just keeping his opponent pinned back with these small Vulture run-bys and forcing effOrt to actually respond. Can effOrt really come back though? The supplies tell a sad, sad story as effOrt is actually down 60 supply. He can't actually reach anywhere near max because he's trading so cost efficiently against these Vultures, against tanks out in the middle of the map, trying to clear mines, etc. He's going to go ahead and start up the drop play though. He wants to go ahead and get that moving, maybe potentially drop into that bottom right hand corner base, but he's already lost so much economy and he's lost so much time, so much ground in the middle of the map that it's become very difficult for him to actually make a difference. He's going to try this drop down into this middle line right now, but it's all Ultralisk, and like I said, you can't just send Ultralisks. Ultralisks themselves are not really that great. You really need the Lings in there to deal the heavy damage. If you're just trying to deal damage with Ultralisks, you're not going to get a lot done. And I love this Goliath drop by Sharp. It's going to be really crucial in killing even more units. So really cool stuff coming out. effOrt is going to try to run these Ultras down to the 6 o'clock base, but eventually it is going to get cleaned up. There's tons of units reinforcing, unless Sharp just completely forgets about it. He's going to be in really good shape, honestly. And effOrt's sending another group of units down the right-hand side of the mountain, trying to get something done, but there's so many tanks in position already, and these Ultras are actually just going to melt, just absolutely melt to the tank fire, and really good D-matrices as well. So that allows those tanks to stay alive for much longer than they really should. Again, this Goliath drop in effOrt's main, and there's nothing to really deal with it. And he's even going to pick it up yet again and drop it over by the third base. effOrt just falling apart to the harassment style of Sharp. Sharp just doing an incredible job of keeping it just doing small little harassment here and there, but it's caused so many resources from effOrt to be diverted elsewhere, and so many drones have gone down over the course of this game. It's been really, really, really tough for effOrt to just even get any sort of a foothold in this game. You can see he's starting to get frustrated even, trying to desperately make something happen, but it's not going to happen. The Terran player has 3-3 now and has complete full control of the map. There's not really much that effOrt can do. This tank push is going to be absolutely brutal, even with the possibility of these Mutalisks coming, or sorry, even with the possibility of these Ultras coming in and getting a really good flank. There's just too many mines, there's too many tanks, and even with money swarms, I don't think he's actually going to be able to do much damage to this tank line. The splash damage is just too strong. This one sunken colony is helping out brilliantly, but even with these really good swarms, I don't think there's a way for effOrt to get back into this game. He's trying desperately to break this ramp, but with the position on the top of this ramp, Sharp has complete control over his opponent. He's allowed to do absolutely anything. Unfortunately, that science vessel going down, so that's going to be no more irradiates there. But honestly, it doesn't even matter when you have this many tanks. Sharp should be reinforcing pretty soon, so even though this tank line is thinning a little bit, it's going to be not much big deal for Sharp as he continues to reinforce. And meanwhile, effOrt is trying to get up that 12 o'clock expansion. Here comes the Mutilus switch again. He's going to try to switch it in the Mutilus and break his opponent, but with so many Ultras that went down, with this base that's about to go down now, it's not looking good for it at all. I love that even morphs the lair there just to try to give that hatchery a little bit of extra health, keep it alive, but it's not going to happen. It is going to be going down. And ironically, these siege tanks are pretty safe underneath the Dark Swarm against the Mutilus, but the Swarm does eventually dissipate, and that's going to allow the Mutilus to clean up all the tanks here. So actually, that was a very nice trade for effOrt, but I mean, look at the supplies. He's still down 50 to 70 supply down, and the gap is only just going to keep increasing the longer this game goes, as he starts to run out of money, as he starts to continue to trade cost efficiently with the super crazy strong mech army. He's going to try to rebuild this base and go on the offensive, but with so many units already in position, I don't know how this is going to work. He does catch a lot of these tanks on the ramp, so this is really good news for him. He might actually be able to clean up all of these tanks if he goes aggressive here. But he wants to make sure that he deals with the missile turrets first. He doesn't want to have to deal with the missile turrets while he's trying to kill the tanks. But Sharp is just continuing to put up missile turrets, continuing to build Goliaths, and they're so cost efficient versus these Mutilus. And that's all of the tanks that are about to go down. Even stuff on this high ground doing a lot of damage. Honestly, I think he needs to focus the tanks so he can get on top of there. But still 2 more tanks in position. I don't know if he's actually going to be able to hold. More and more Lings just flooding in. Did effOrt find an opening in his opponent's base? Is he going to be able to get in here and clean this up? I don't know, because Lings are just not cost efficient against 3-3 mech at this point. Sharp cleans it up, and effOrt is once again in the dark. He doesn't have anything. The best he can do is hope for another surprise Mutilus switch, but with so many Goliaths out on the map now, will it really do any good? A good swarm there. That's going to allow effOrt to push this back for a little bit, and he's going to try to go ahead and push that front, but the Science Vessel is there with the Irradiate, and that's going to prevent any more swarms from going down. At this point, it's just the Ultralisk sitting alone by themselves. Smart of effOrt to go ahead and pull the Ultralisk back. He doesn't want to lose them too early. And here comes another big attack trying to jump in here and get on top of these tanks. He's actually right on top of the tanks. This is actually the money engagement that you want as a Zerg player. But I think there just might be a little bit too much mech. More Zerglings coming out across the map, but these couple of Spider-Mines going to kill off so many for basically free. And Sharp is in a really fantastic position as long as he remembers to mine, as long as he remembers to macro. He'll be in a pretty good shape going forward. The 3 and 9 o'clock position still under contest. Neither player really being able to take them at this point in time. Once Sharp manages to max out yet again, he's probably going to make a push for either the natural or the top left-hand base of the Zerg player, while taking either the 3 or the 9 o'clock position. But at this point, I don't know if it even matters, because the effOrt is continuing to just throw away units left and right, left and right, left and right, and he's not doing any damage. Now 100 supply down from his opponent. He just can't seem to really break up into Sharp's fortified forces. They're just too strong right now. Sharp is slowly, ever so slowly making his way up into this natural, and you can tell the patience from Sharp is really paying off. Every single time something comes in, he just kites it back, waits for the tanks to kill it. He's not just unsieging and A moving, which I really like to see. I like to see how patient he is with this, but with that Filer going down, effOrt's chances of winning this game are looking bleak. He's going to try one more last defense on this ramp, but honestly, again, this is Sharp getting on top of this ramp with a very strong force, and he's going to be able to have a very deep tank line, which will make pushing into it with Ultralist Inling basically impossible. And here comes one Storm that's going to get on top of this tank, which is nice, but one Swarm isn't enough to win this game, especially when all of the units are dead. Sharp doing a really good job of continuing to re-macro. He's stayed consistently at 180 supply and above for most of the game, even when he was under a lot of fire. And these defensive matrix are really paying off quite a bit. They're very, very strong and allowing these tanks to survive for much longer than they really should. Without being able to whittle off these tanks, it's so hard for effOrt to actually gain any foothold. Now, just struggling so desperately to protect this mineral-only base and the ramp leading down to the 12 o'clock base. But I don't think he can do it with just Lings. He's just trying to send scores and scores of Lings against his opponents, and that's just not going to do versus this mech army. It's too cost efficient. The Goliaths and the Vultures are too good against Lings, and the tanks just deal so much splash damage. I don't think he can actually hold this off, but he's going to continue to try. He's actually going to retake that base immediately, hoping that it works, and as I suspected, Sharp took that 9 o'clock base behind this push. effOrt trying to take the 3 o'clock base sneakily to maybe get back into the game, but he's having trouble really getting where he would like to be. These couple Lings may make their way down to the 6 o'clock base and do some damage, but no, there's already Vultures in position to deal with that. So Sharp just doing an amazing job of having the awareness to always have his units in the right place. He's never complacent about his positioning. He's always being smart, and there is the GG. effOrt not being able to break his opponent and eventually falling to the multitasking pressure of Sharp.